Have you ever found yourself staring at a lifeless phone screen on a Saturday evening, profoundly tormented by a man's sudden silence, wondering exactly where his initial fiery obsession evaporated? The sharp, hollow pain of his emotional withdrawal naturally urges you to reach out, to frantically seek answers and validation. But let me offer you a brutally counterintuitive truth. Sometimes the absolute only way to make a man genuinely hear you is to entirely starve him of your words. To gracefully ignore him is, quite frankly, the only way to become deafening. The Matrix continuously feeds you the rather tiresome illusion that you must look for rom-com signs of affection, predictable gifts, sweet words, and classic gallantry. Yet true seduction does not reside in your anxious availability or a bouquet of cheap flowers. A woman anchored fiercely in her dark feminine energy knows that a man's genuine devotion only truly begins when his fragile masculine ego completely capitulates. Today, we will dissect the 4 instinctive, silent proofs that a man is entirely and irreversibly under your control. By the end of this session, you will no longer fear the silence of men. You will understand precisely how to weaponize it. Pay very close attention. Let us begin by observing how most men generally engage in conversation. The ordinary man listens merely to formulate his next reply, nodding politely whilst his mind inevitably wanders to his next pint or the weekend's football. But when a man is utterly captivated by you, the dynamic shifts into something quite extraordinary: high-tension listening. This is not the casual attentiveness of an acquaintance, but a primal, laser-focused absorption of your every syllable. He knows instinctively that to miss a crucial detail is to risk losing his precarious footing in your world. You see, his reptilian brain has recognized you as the ultimate prize, and suddenly a profound survival mode kicks in. When you casually mention on a rainy Tuesday that you prefer your Earl Grey with a splash of oat milk rather than almond, and he flawlessly executes this weeks later, do not mistake it for mere sweetness. It is highly strategic. He is furiously cataloging these fragments of information because he views your preferences not as idle chatter, but as a vital survival manual. He is terrified that a single lapse in attention might signal to you that he simply isn't up to standard. Let us ground this in reality, shall we? When you recount an infuriating afternoon, he doesn't try to abruptly fix the problem or brush it off with a hollow platitude. Instead, he actively studies the cast of characters in your life, remembering perfectly well that Sarah from accounting is the insufferable one, not Jane. Whilst an uninvested man lets your anecdotes wash over him like background noise, this man leans in, analyzing the subtle shifts in your mood. It is rather amusing, honestly, watching a grown man hang on to your sentences as if you were reading out his final verdict. Understand that this level of retention requires a rather colossal expenditure of cognitive energy on his part. A man only allocates this much mental bandwidth when his ego has subconsciously decided that your presence is an empire deeply worth serving. He is not merely listening to the sound of your voice, he is painstakingly mapping the architecture of your mind. He has realized that to conquer a woman of your formidable caliber, cheap charm and standard textbook moves are entirely useless. He must first master your inner world before he can ever hope to claim a permanent place beside you. Therefore, when you notice this relentless, microscopic attention to the minutiae of your life, embrace the quiet power you wield. You do not need to over-explain yourself or fill the comfortable silences with nervous chatter. Simply pour yourself a glass of Merlot, sit back, and allow him to do the heavy lifting of unraveling your mystery. Yet, as fascinating as this intense scrutiny may be, it is merely the preliminary phase of his capitulation. Once he has thoroughly studied the map of your mind, his next involuntary move involves surrendering something far more precious to the masculine ego. Men are inherently driven by a rather comical need to be right, possessing egos that are often as fragile as they are colossal. The modern man thrives on absolute autonomy, stubbornly clinging to the belief that he is the sole master and commander of his destiny. For a man to voluntarily seek your counsel before making a significant move, be it navigating a complex career shift or simply choosing the venue for a Friday evening dinner, goes violently against his innate programming. It is a profound departure from the lone wolf facade they so desperately try to project to the world. When this psychological shift occurs, it is an undeniable indicator that the dynamics of power have fundamentally rearranged themselves in your favor. If you find him suddenly rearranging his meticulously crafted schedule to accommodate yours, do not merely brush it off as standard British politeness. It is, in truth, the alpha's capitulation. Let us be brutally honest for a moment. An uninvested man, entirely absorbed in his own importance, will cancel on you the moment a better offer or a minor inconvenience arises. However, when he is utterly under your influence, he will eagerly sacrifice his sacred Sunday afternoon plans just to help you assemble a rather infuriating piece of flat-pack furniture. He is willingly placing your convenience atop the pedestal of his priorities, signaling a deeply rooted psychological submission. Observe his behavior when he's faced with a genuine dilemma. Suppose he's dealing with a treacherous political situation at his firm, and he comes to you seeking that final nod of approval before he acts. He is not asking for permission like a subservient schoolboy. Rather, he has recognized a rather humbling truth. He sees that his cold, rigid, masculine logic pales in comparison to the nuanced, penetrating brilliance of your feminine intuition. Instead of waiting anxiously by your phone for a breadcrumb of attention, you have smoothly transitioned into the very oracle he relies upon to make sense of his world. Society constantly feeds women the tiresome narrative that they must shrink themselves, that they must let the man lead the dance so as not to bruise his precious pride. But when a man is truly captivated by your dark feminine energy, you never need to play the delicate, helpless flower. He actively craves your sharp perspective because his subconscious has realized that his life runs significantly smoother with your influence woven into it. You have quite literally become his true north, the steadfast compass by which he navigates the tumultuous waters of his own ambition. It is a terrifying vulnerability for him to admit, yet he cannot help but present his choices at your feet. Revel in this quiet authority, my dear, because commanding a man's respect and ego to this degree is a rare art form. Let him seek your validation whilst you remain grounded, unbothered, and elegantly detached from his minor chaotic dramas, perhaps observing him whilst you enjoy a quiet cup of espresso. However, do not be fooled into thinking this profound submission means he has entirely lost his masculine edge, or that the psychological chessboard has been put away. Quite the opposite, in fact. To ensure you are genuinely the unshakable queen he believes you to be, he will soon feel the primal urge to test the very walls of your fortress. It is a common misconception that a peaceful, entirely argument-free dynamic is the hallmark of true devotion. In reality, silence and swift flight are merely the cowardly weapons of uninvested men. When a superficial suitor faces friction, he ghosts you or retreats into his shell simply because you are not worth the resulting headache. Conversely, when a man who is profoundly captivated initiates a passionate debate, he does not flee. He engages with an intensity that might feel confronting, but it is, in fact, deeply revealing. Welcome, my dear, to the boundary test. He is unconsciously pushing against the walls of your emotional fortress to see if the architecture actually holds. He possesses an innate primal need to ensure that you are a queen genuinely capable of withstanding his masculine force, rather than a fragile illusion that shatters under the slightest pressure. He argues not to belittle you, but to desperately verify that you will not fold. He wants to know if your dark feminine energy is a genuine way of life or merely a temporary costume you wear. Let us be brutally honest about how the average woman behaves in these rather tense scenarios. A woman lacking in your strategic depth will immediately panic at the first sign of a heated disagreement, frantically double-texting to smooth things over and appease his ego. You must do the exact opposite. When he challenges your stance over dinner, do not scramble to agree or desperately attempt to match his raised volume. Simply hold his gaze, gracefully take a sip of your sparkling water, and maintain an infuriatingly calm silence. Let him exhaust his own tempest. If he argues fiercely but never once crosses that rigid line into disrespect or name-calling, you are witnessing a profound level of reverence. He is not actively trying to break your spirit, he is secretly praying that your spirit is entirely unbreakable. And when the debate concludes and he inevitably yields to your unwavering firmness, it is a magnificent psychological spectacle. Do not view this simply as an argument won, but as his masculine energy willingly bowing to the majestic solidity of your frame. He concedes the point because he has found exactly what his reptilian brain was searching for, a formidable partner who can navigate his storms without losing her own footing. You have brilliantly passed the most rigorous psychological audit his ego could ever muster. However, once a man is absolutely convinced of your unshakable strength and high value, his internal landscape shifts quite dramatically. Recognizing the sheer rarity of the prize he has secured, his focus instantly pivots towards the outside world, awakening a far more primitive and territorial response. Dark psychology reveals a rather uncomfortable truth about masculine nature. A man fiercely protects only that which he considers entirely invaluable. Society packages this as classic romance, endlessly selling you the tiresome fantasy of the chivalrous knight. However, stripping away the fairy tale exposes something far more primal. The guardian instinct is not born of sweet sentimentality. It is a raw, territorial imperative. When a man is completely under your influence, his psychological radar for threats shifts into absolute overdrive. Consider his reaction when a friend or colleague makes a slightly off-color remark that subtly disrespects your boundaries. An ordinary, uninvested man will laugh awkwardly or play the peacekeeper, far too terrified of social friction to rock the boat. Conversely, a man who has surrendered to your immense value will ruthlessly sever ties with anyone who dares to diminish you. This is not him merely playing the gentleman. He views any disrespect towards you as a direct, unacceptable challenge to his own sovereignty. This instinct frequently manifests in the most brilliantly subtle ways, my dear. If you are navigating a chaotic environment, and the atmosphere turns slightly abrasive, observe how he instinctively repositions himself between you and the disruption. Rather than anxiously clutching his arm, you must remain perfectly poised, perhaps gracefully adjusting your silk scarf or turning your attention to a painting, whilst allowing him to orchestrate the perimeter. He steps in at the slightest threat because his reptilian brain perceives you as a rare masterpiece that requires constant safeguarding. Let us be brutally honest about the driving force behind this behavior. His fierce protection is fundamentally rooted in a very specific, quiet terror. It is the gnawing, persistent fear that that another high-value man will inevitably recognize your radiant light and snatch you away whilst he isn't looking. His predator instinct is simply marking its territory, driven by a profound realization of his own remarkable luck. He is acutely aware that a woman anchored securely in her dark feminine energy always has an array of formidable suitors waiting in the wings. He fundamentally understands that if he fails to provide you with the ultimate psychological and physical security, you will not linger to complain. You will simply vanish elegantly into the ether, leaving him to grapple with the crippling regret of losing his queen. By graciously permitting him to shield you, you are not surrendering your independence, you are brilliantly validating his biological necessity to serve your empire. And once you truly grasp the sheer magnitude of this submission, you unlock the very foundation of this entire psychological dynamic. Now, I leave you with a rather provocative question to ponder. I want you to be brutally honest with yourself. Which of these 4 silent signs of masculine capitulation have you already observed in him? Or perhaps, which boundary are you currently planning to test? Share your experiences in the comment section below. I always find the intricate details of your strategic victories quite fascinating to read. If you are thoroughly exhausted by the Matrix's fragile fairy tales and are finally ready to truly master the dark psychology of relationships, it is time to elevate your position. I invite you to elegantly press the subscribe button for Destiny's Decree and activate your notifications. Do not leave the fate of your empire to chance. Until our next session, my dear, remain utterly unbothered and never lower your crown.